Hello, this is the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 4th edition system for Foundry Virtual Tabletop. This video is intended to be a walkthrough of the character sheet and all its functionality. At the top here, you can see we have all the very specific details that pertain to your character, from name to what star sign they were born under. Below that, we can see that the character sheet is divided into many different tabs, and each of these tabs has a very specific focus, and we'll get into each of them in turn. For now, we're on the main tab, and as you can see, the main tab is what gives you the fundamentals and the basics of your character, that being characteristics, laid out in the same way as the character sheet, with the initial value, the advancements, and the current value at the bottom, which you can click on to roll the characteristic. Below the characteristics is the movement values, which are manually input, with the walk and run values automatically calculated based on your input. Next to that is the fortune, fate, resilience, and resolve boxes. Each of those are manually entered as the player uses them. Next to that is the wounds box, the max of which is automatically calculated based on your characteristics. The current value is manually input. And similar cases for the next row, critical wounds, automatically calculated maximum value, and you enter the current value based on how many you have. Same thing with corruption. And finally we have experience. You can update the total, and spent and current is automatically calculated by the difference. The final part of the main tab is the career list. Now, here is a list of all the careers you've entered, and you can toggle whether you've completed them or they're your current career. Now, if you click that they're your current career, you can see that it actually fills out the top section of the character sheet with that information: your class, your career, and your career level. You can also click on one of these careers to see a drop-down description of all the characteristics, skills, and talents available to the career. One last thing about the main tab that I definitely want to address is all these auto-calculated values. Now, if we look at walk, run, wounds, critical wounds, corruption, they're all automatically calculated by some formula. However, if something breaks that formula and you need to change it to something different, well, you can just right-click this auto-calculated value and you can change it to whatever you want. You can change the walk run to be lower than the normal value, you can have more wounds or less wounds for whatever reason. So you can just do that by right-clicking the auto-calculated value and you can set it to whatever you want. Next up is the Skills tab. Now you can see the Skills tab is divided into two different columns. One is Basic, one is Group Skills. The layout is similar to the character sheet in that first you have the name of the skill, then the base characteristic of the skill, the value of that characteristic, then the advancements of the skill, and then the total value of the skill. Just like characteristics, you can edit the advancements and then the total is reflected. And finally, you can click on the total values of the skill to roll the skill. Now below the skills you can see a small box labeled penalties. Now these come from various different sources. We'll see later that minus 10 stealth comes from armor. Now the main goal of this character sheet is not automation, but ease of access of information. So this minus 10 stealth is not automatically applied, it's just there for a reminder. Now the next tab is the Talents tab. This gives you a list of all the talents you've taken. You can see their names and you can click on them to give a drop down, a description of what they do. You can see the times you've taken them versus the maximum times you can take them. And then you have the tests that they are associated with. This is a good point to step back and show you a little bit of how rolling works. If we go back to the Skills tab, you'll recall that I said that you can click on any of the total skill values to roll them. We can go ahead and roll a cool test, and this roll dialog pops up. Now this is still work in progress, but I'm pretty excited about this, so I wanted to show it to you anyway. Now in this role dialog, I want to focus on the talent bonuses box, which you can select any of your talent bonuses to receive that bonus upon a successful test. So this should help in being a constant reminder of what your talent tests are and how you can easily apply them to a role. The next tab is the Combat tab, and now this tab is quite involved but also quite important, so let's get into it. It's divided into many different sections. We'll start at the top, being melee weapons, and much of this is interactable. You can click on the name of the weapon to roll it. You can click on the qualities and flaws to show a drop-down description of what they do. You can click on the reach value to see the description of that reach. And you can see that the damage is automatically calculated based on whatever formula you give it. For instance, Y-hander, I believe, is SB plus 5, and if we look at our strength bonus, it is indeed 4, so that adds up to plus 9. Similarly, below we have ranged weapons. They're similar to melee weapons, but have a few extra features that we can cover. Again, you can click on the name of the weapon to roll the weapon. You can click on the qualities and flaws, just like a melee weapon, to see the description. You can click on the weapon group to see if it has any special properties. And one thing I find very useful is you can click on the range to see a breakdown of the range bands and see what bonuses you might get. Lastly, there's this ammunition drop-down we can use to load our ranged weapon. Different ammo applies different modifiers to your weapon. It might increase damage, increase range, or add qualities or flaws, or it might detract from it. All of this is reflected based on what ammo you use. So as we load the weapon, you can see the damage increases and qualities are added. Below we have armor. Now armor is divided into each of the hit locations, and you can see each individual piece of armor that protects that location. Just like weapons, you can click on each quality or flaw of an armor piece to show a description of that quality or flaw. You can also see each individual armor piece's AP value. And if you hover over it, you can see the current value versus the maximum value of that AP. So we can see that this breastplate is currently damaged. You can repair or damage an armor piece by left-clicking or right-clicking on the AP value respectively. On the headers of each hit location, you can see a breakdown of all the damage reduction affecting that hit location. So from the left side, we have armor value. In the middle, we have shield bonus. And to the right, we have toughness bonus. Again, we want everything easily accessible, so you can see exactly how much damage reduction you receive just by looking at this part of the sheet. So you don't have to go flipping around to the main tab to figure out what your toughness bonus is, for example. The last part of the combat tab is at the bottom, which is the injury list. Now here you'll see all your injuries from broken bones to torn muscles and where those injuries are, so arm, head, etc. You can similarly click on them to see a breakdown of their descriptions, what penalties you get, etc. The next tab is the trappings tab, or inventory. It displays all the items the character has in their respective categories. At the top here you can see we have encumbrance, and it shows the penalties you might have for being over encumbered. Below this we have money. You can edit any quantity in this trappings tab by clicking on the quantity value. You can left click to increase or right click to decrease. You can see as I increase the amount of money, it's reflected on the total value in pennies on the header. Some items, like the weapons and armor listed below, have a toggle option. You can equip weapons and you can wear armor. Equipped weapons mean they show up in the combat tab. There's no restriction built in the system to limit how much you can equip. That's up for your GM or for you to decide. However, wearing armor does mean more. Of course, if you don't wear something, you don't get the AP value. And if you wear something, you decrease the encumbrance. So that has a bit more meaning. You can click on a weapon to see a drop-down menu of all the attributes of that item. You can see as I increase the quantity of Zweihanders, he gets more encumbered and you can see the penalties show up. And finally, the Trappings tab has a functional container system, and you can see all the containers you have at the bottom of the sheet. So you can have items within containers, and even containers within containers up to 5 levels. Additionally, you can choose to wear the container or not if it's like a backpack, or you can choose to not count the encumbrance of the container at all. This is, for example, useful for carts, so you can see all the goods inside a cart, but you're not carrying the cart itself, so you don't count the encumbrance of the cart. Finally, there's the notes section. This includes pretty much everything else you could need. There's a biography editor, there are text entries for ambitions, there is lists of psychologies, your corruptions and mutations, and then there's diseases, as well as anything else the GM might want to jot down. It is good to note that diseases and GM notes are not visible to players. One last thing I want to show you is another sheet, that of a spellcaster. They have a very similar sheet. They have all their careers, skills, talents, but we have an extra tab for magic. This lists all your petty and lore spells. You can click on the spells to cast them or channel them. You can click on this button for a drop-down menu. It lists all the attributes of the spell, such as range or targets. You can see range is 48. That equates to your willpower. Whatever you enter, whether it's willpower or willpower bonus, it should automatically show what that value is. And below we have the lore spells with some added functionality. You can click on the name, just like petty spells, to cast or channel them. You can see the CN value under the CN column. You can see how far you've channeled under the SL column. You can edit this manually by clicking on it to increase it by 1, right-clicking to clear it, or you can just channel the spell and it should automatically add the SL based on the test. Next to that, you can toggle whether you've memorized the spell or not. And lastly, you can see the drop-down menu similar to the petty spells that shows all the attributes and descriptions of the spell. Lastly, and I'm quite proud of this feature, is the ingredients. Now you can see if we go back to our trappings tab and go to the bottom, you can see a section of ingredients. And for each of those ingredients, you can assign a spell. And you can see we've assigned Bolt to Perfume and the other two to Shadow Step. Now if we go back, we can see Bolt has an option for an ingredient, as well as Shadow Step has an option for both of the ones we assigned them. And when you cast it with an ingredient selected, it will nullify a miscast. Well, that was a quick rundown of the character sheet in the Foundry virtual tabletop Warhammer system. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to showing you more videos about it soon. I have a lot coming up that should be really exciting. I want to thank my partner, Edmund, and I definitely want to thank Atropos and the Foundry community for answering my questions and helping me along with any problems I had. Down in the description, you'll find links to our GitHub page if you want to contribute or monitor our progress. You can also find links to information about Foundry Virtual Tabletop if you want to learn more about it. Feel free to contact me or my partner if you have any questions. We're happy to answer. We can be found in either the Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Discord or the Foundry Discord, and are always open for questions. Thanks.